My name is Dan Kraemer. I'm live in Kitchener, Ontario, which is just across the lake from Brockport, about 60 miles from Toronto. And I've been associated with the group for a number of years now through basically the connection was Concordant Publishing and Universal of All Salvation. And every once in a while, I speak at the conferences, and Brockport has invited me to speak today. Topic today is Matthew chapter 5, the Sermon on the Mount. Did Jesus change the law? And basically, all I'm going to be doing here is reading along my PowerPoint presentation here, and you can read along with me. So, has the law been done away with? Or did Jesus change and improve it? For example, the Sermon on the Mount. Or had the scribes, Pharisees, and commoners corrupted it? And was Jesus just correcting them and confirming the original law? And I'm also going to take a little bit more of a detailed look at one of those supposed changes regarding divorce. Now, to fully understand how the laws did or didn't change from the Old Testament to the New Testament is a huge study. I made a start on that subject in Brockport in September 2016 at a conference that they held there. To briefly state the conclusion of that study, I said that it was not the law that was done away with, it was the works of the law that were done away with, and that the term works was a Hebrew term for duties that the priests performed. In other words, the works that they did was just another way of saying the rituals that they performed. For instance, the sacrificing of animals. It was these such works, duties, or rituals that were fading away and were no longer necessary, and not the foundational moral laws of a loving society that were being annulled. Forgive me, but I will never understand how the law against murder would have ever been annulled by Jesus. But, well, here again, there's a little bit of interference on my screen here. Whoops. Okay. Back up. There's just something in the a title bar in the way of my Linda Warner raised hand. I don't know. Sermon on the Mount. I'm sure you're familiar with Matthew 5 and Jesus' apparent dissatisfaction with the Old Testament. The people of Israel had received a set of laws through Moses, but it seems that Jesus trumped them in his Sermon on the Mount. An extreme version of this view might say that Jesus annulled all the Old Testament laws. A milder view might say that Jesus took the legally focused Old Testament laws and changed them or added to them a spiritual dimension focused on the heart. But either way, it seems that Jesus changed the laws, and this is a problem for some Bible students because they believe that God does not change. God's law is perfect. And that if Jesus was Yahweh, how is it that Jesus changed his own perfect and Eonian laws? For instance, the Old Testament, Psalms in particular, says Yahweh's law is perfect. Psalm 19. The law of Yahweh is flawless, restoring the soul. The testimony of Yahweh is faithful, making wise the simple. The precepts of Yahweh are upright, rejoicing the heart. The instructions of Yahweh is pure, enlightening the eyes. The fear of Yahweh is clean, standing into the future. The judgments of Yahweh are truth. They are righteous altogether, coveted more than gold, and much more than glittering gold, and sweeter than honey and drips of the combs. Moreover, your servant is being warned by them. In the keeping of them is a great consequence. And also God's law is truth for the eon, often translated forever. Psalm 111. The works of his hand are truth and right judgment. Faithful are all his precepts, supported into the future for the eon, worked out in truth and uprightness. He sent a ransom for his people. He enjoined his covenant on them for the eon. Holy and fear inspiring is his name. For the fear of Yahweh is the beginning of wisdom. All who practice it have a good insight. His praise is standing into the future. Okay, now let's get to an overview of the Sermon on the Mount found in Matthew 5. It starts off with Jesus proclaiming to his disciples, first, the Beatitudes. Blessed are the poor in spirit, etc. Then saying they are the salt and light of the earth. Then saying he came not to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. And finally, he gives us a series of 6 statements that start off with, you hear it said, such and such, followed by, but I say unto you, such and such. Matthew 5:21-48. What was actually said? So let's have a brief look at each of these 6 you hear, but I say comments. Number 1, anger. Matthew 5:21. You hear that it was declared to the ancients, you shall not murder. Yet whoever should be murdering shall be liable to the judging. Yet I am saying to you that everyone who is angry with his brother shall be liable to the judging. Yet whoever may be saying to his brother Raka shall be liable to the Sanhedrin. Yet whoever may be saying stupid shall be liable to the Gehenna of fire. Number 2, lust. You hear that it was declared, you shall not be committing adultery. Yet I am saying to you that every man looking at a woman to lust for her already commits adultery with her in his heart. Number 3, divorce. Now it was declared, same thing as you hear it said, whoever should be dismissing his wife, let him be giving her a divorce. Yet I am saying to you that everyone dismissing his wife outside of a case of prostitution is making her commit adultery, and whoever should be marrying her who has been dismissed is committing adultery. Number 4, oaths. Again, you hear that it was declared to the ancients, you shall not be perjuring, yet you shall be paying to the Lord your oaths. Yet I am saying to you absolutely not to swear, neither by heaven, for it is the throne of God, nor by earth, for it is a footstool for his feet, nor by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king, nor by your head should you be swearing, for you are not able to make one hair white or black. Let your word be yes, yes, or no, no. Now what is in excess of these is of the wicked one. Number 5, retaliation. You hear that it was declared, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Yet I am saying to you not to withstand a wicked person, but anyone who slaps you on your right cheek, turn to him also the other. And he who wants to sue you to obtain your tunic, leave him your cloak also. And anyone who conscripts you 1 mile, go with him 2. To him who requests you give, and from him who wants to borrow from you, you may not turn. And finally, number 6, love your enemies. You hear that it was declared, you shall be loving your associate, and you shall be hating your enemy. Yet I am saying to you, love your enemies, and pray for those who are persecuting you. What was Jesus' intent with this teaching? Okay, Now we have to stop and think about this and compare it to what different Christians teach and make up our mind about what Jesus was trying to get across here. Did Jesus correct the law? Or did Jesus improve the law? Or did Jesus abolish the law? Or did Jesus affirm the law as it was? Or did Jesus pick and choose which laws to keep? Or even did he make the law more strict, even impossible to keep? Some of those rules as far as loving your enemy and not even lusting after a woman in your heart. Whatever you believe, you can't have it multiple ways. Now, a wrong assumption equals a wrong conclusion. 6 times Jesus says, "You hear it said." And because we are given no further details or blunt hints to the contrary, we might assume that what they hear said was literal Old Testament scripture. And because it sounds like these statements are at least generally correct, we might take them as gospel truth. And therefore, when Jesus continues to say, "But I say unto you something different," we assume Jesus is changing or modifying the law. But we assume wrong. In the immediate 4 verses previous to this, Jesus had just said he did not come to change the law. Let's take a look. Jesus came not to demolish the law. Matthew 5:17 through 20. You should not infer came to demolish the law or the prophets. I came not to demolish, but to fulfill. For verily I am saying to you, till heaven and earth should be passing by, one iota or one serif may by no means be passing by from the law, till all should be occurring. Whosoever then should be annulling one of the least of these precepts, and should be teaching men thus, the least in the kingdom of the heavens shall he be called. Yet whoever should be doing and teaching them, he shall be called great in the kingdom of the heavens. For I am saying to you that if ever your righteousness should not be superabounding more than that of the scribes and Pharisees, by no means may you be entering into the kingdom of the heavens. All right, those 4 verses again, Matthew 5:17 through 20. I'm going to focus in on them. Jesus came not to demolish the law. Jesus could not be more clear about the fact that he did not come to abolish the law. Certainly, we can debate what exactly it means that he came to fulfill it. But there is no question that Jesus did not come to abolish it. Heaven and earth will pass away before the tiniest stroke of the law passes away. And Jesus has no goodwill toward anyone who would abolish, annul, relax, loose, depending on which translation you look at, one of the least of these commandments, or teach others to relax them. The great ones in his kingdom are those who do the law and who teach others to do it. And to enter Jesus' kingdom, we must have a righteousness that exceeds that of the scribes and Pharisees. Okay, again, concerning those 4 verses, notice the contrasting parallels. Jesus came not to abolish the law. Jesus came to fulfill the law. Heaven and earth will not pass away till the law is accomplished. Anyone who relaxes even a single command and teaches others to do so is least. Anyone who does the commands and teaches others to do them is great. If you are not more righteous than the Pharisees, you will not enter the kingdom. Jesus contrasts his purpose, which is to fulfill, with what is not his purpose, to abolish. He contrasts the right use of the law, which is to do it, with the wrong use of the law, which is to relax it. He contrasts those who get into the kingdom, those more righteous than the scribes, with those who don't get into the kingdom, presumably the scribes. These 4 verses are the setup for the next 37 verses. In the next 37 verses, Jesus works through 6 more contrasts, 6 more examples of what is heard and what he says. There is a formula to all 6. You have heard that it was said, but I say unto you. There is one each in regards to anger, lust, divorce, oaths, retaliation, enemies. And of course, we just read them. The first half of the text is contrasted with the second half of the text. That is obvious. But what is missed is the employing of the theme that was just set up in those 4 previous verses. I came not to destroy, but to fulfill. The first half of the statement regards those who would destroy or relax the law. And the second half is to do with fulfilling and keeping the law. Strange, but this is just the opposite of what I always thought. We might notice that 6 times Jesus said, you hear it said. But an astute student will notice that this is not Jesus' normal way of introducing an Old Testament citation. Jesus usually says, it is written. Or, again, it is written. Or, for it is written. And you can look up all those citations. Later in Matthew, he will incredulously ask the scribes and Pharisees 6 times, have you not or never read? See all those verses. He will command them to go and learn what the scripture says in Matthew 9:13 and 12:7. He will accuse them of setting aside or relaxing the word of God for the sake of their oral tradition. See Matthew 15:3 and 6. He will curse them for not entering the kingdom and for missing the point of the law. The point of all this is, when Jesus refers to the Old Testament, it is the written word. When he said, you have heard that it was said, he was talking about the Pharisees' oral traditions. But aren't the statements in Matthew 5 accurate? Well, only partially. And isn't that one of the adversary's greatest characteristics? Telling a half-truth. So now, finally, we can get into the details of these 6 contrasting statements and see how accurate they are, and if Jesus was annulling, changing, or confirming the Old Testament laws. Number 1, thou shalt not murder. Statement number 1 says, you shall not murder. And if you do, you will be liable to the judgment. That's true enough. But this falls far short of the full intent of the 6th commandment. Thou shalt not murder. Weren't we all taught as children that this included hating and being angry with our brothers and sisters? So, when Jesus further explained that everyone who is angry with his brother shall be liable to the judging, he is not expanding the law or saying anything new, but he is warning his listeners that their teachers are failing to teach them fully. He warned that they will be the least in the kingdom of heaven, and by implication, them too. Number 2, adultery also includes lustful desires. And much the same applies to statement number 2. Certainly, we should not be committing adultery, but is everything right up to the point of committing adultery okay? I am guessing that the common men may have tried to limit the intentions of this law to the bare minimum. But even in the Old Testament, the law was not meant to be limited to tablets of stone, but to be written on tablets of flesh in the hearts of the people. Even in the Old Testament, not only were men's foreskins to be circumcised, but also their hearts. The laws spelled out in Exodus were always about heart intentions. Jesus was not expanding anything. This is nothing new. Jesus was only reestablishing the law's original intents. Number 3, regarding divorce. The third quote on divorce is a little more complicated, so I will finish up with that one in a minute at the end of this study. Number 4, regarding oaths. The fourth quote on swearing oaths, Matthew 5:33, is drawn from Leviticus 19:12, Numbers 30, verse 2, and Deuteronomy 23, verse 21. But none of those passages say anything about swearing by heaven, or by the earth, or by Jerusalem, or by your head. This is a perfect example of the Pharisees adding to the law, and by doing so, giving themselves loopholes in order to tell lies and supposedly not be liable for them. They could claim that they were not accountable for their lies under oath if they didn't format their oath in exactly the right manner. This was about as immature as a child crossing his fingers when lying and claiming he is therefore innocent. Again, Jesus is just confirming the original simple command not to lie, period. Number 5, regarding retaliation. The fifth quote can be found all throughout the books of Moses. Matthew 5:38. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Fair is fair, but justice is never to be used in support of vengeance. In fact, this stipulation exists to prevent personal vengeance and to limit what sanctions you may seek and what civil courts may impose. Now consider this. Why is it that the right cheek is explicitly noted? A slap on that cheek implies that you were hit by the back of someone's left hand. Think about that. That is more of an insult than an assault. It seems to me this is implying that a mild injustice done to us should not be overblown, and we should be graceful with our so-called wicked neighbor about such a minor infraction. Number 6, love your enemies. Matthew 5:43. You have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. This quote is not a quote. It has a ring of truth, but you can spend all day trying to look up and you shall hate your enemy, and you will not find it. This linchpin should alert us to something significant. Jesus is not quoting the Old Testament laws to correct them in some way. He is quoting what these people have heard and what their teachers say about the Old Testament laws. He is quoting teachers who have relaxed the commands, those who would abolish or twist what God has required of them. And though I believe Jesus is quoting the scribes and Pharisees, I believe this applies today to our scripturally lazy, unstudied, and undisciplined public and preachers. Number 6, love your enemies. Allow me to comment further on this commandment. When it was given, Jesus was organizing a mass of ex-slaves in the wilderness into his new, devoted, or holy, and separate and civilized society. These laws were given to them and to them alone for that purpose, in order to produce a God-fearing, safe, and prosperous society. These were communal laws and not laws pertaining to international diplomacy. These people's neighbors and associates were their fellow next-door citizens. Some of them might be wicked, and some of them might even be called enemies, but they were commanded to love each other and to get along. I don't think loving your neighbor applied to the Pharaoh or any other maniacal dictator or people who wished to utterly destroy, not slap, them or us. Okay, now we're going to get into a little bit of a closer look at divorce. Matthew 5:31. Now it was declared, whoever should be dismissing his wife, let him be giving her a divorce. Yet I am saying to you that everyone dismissing his wife outside of a case of prostitution is making her commit adultery. And whosoever should be marrying her who has been dismissed is committing adultery. Now, this really does seem like Jesus is changing the law and making it much harsher. It sounds like, one, there is only one reason to divorce your wife. She is a prostitute. Number two, and if you divorce her for any other reason, you are making her commit adultery. Number three, anyone marrying a divorced woman is committing adultery. And four, although it is unstated, logically, the reverse would be true. Any woman marrying a divorced man would be making the man commit adultery. Wow, this is a mess. Now, it seems to me a funny thing how Catholics and Protestants handle this subject. Let me explain. I was born and raised Catholic, and from a good Catholic family. You know, we went to church every week. I, went to confession every month or whatever. I went to communion. I did all the things that a good Catholic was supposed to do. But the funny thing about Catholics is that as a kid, I never read the Bible. We were lucky if we even had a Bible in the house. And we never read it at school. I went to Catholic school for 12 years. And so Catholics, a lot of the time, played fast and loose with the Bible. The bishops and the Pope, they just made the rules the way they felt like they wanted the rules. But it was the Protestants who read the Bible and adhered to the Bible. But the funny thing is, when it comes to this thing on divorce, it was the Catholics, it seems, that were very strict with these, with Matthew 5 here, what Jesus is teaching here, that, we basically, Catholics were almost not allowed to divorce, period. And if you did, well, let me go on here. And it made, like I say, and yet Protestants, trying to keep my logic straight here. You know, in my, like I say, I can't speak for Protestants because I wasn't raised Protestant, but you know, it was Protestants that were more likely to divorce and such, and not obey this apparent command by Jesus. So the Catholics adhering to this really made life miserable and lonely for conscientious Catholics who wound up divorced. They were not only allowed not to remarry, but if they should remarry, they were living in sin and guilt-ridden for the rest of their life and barred from being a full practicing Catholic. I don't know how Bible-believing Protestants get around these statements, but I have come across a good explanation, and it fits in well with the rest of what I have been saying. We don't realize it, but the scribes or Pharisees had relaxed the laws here again. And in combination with our poor translations and poor attention to detail, all this has put us in this mess. Divorce is never the ideal, but sometimes it is necessary. Yahweh understood this and so allowed divorce in the Old Testament. And don't forget, God was a divorcee himself, having first married Israel and then later on divorcing both Israel and her sister Judah when the nation split into two halves. Now, Deuteronomy 24:1 says this: when a man takes a wife and possesses her, and it comes to be that she should not find favor in his eyes because he has found in her the nakedness of anything, then he would write for her a scroll of divorce, give it into her hand, and send her away from his house. So God's formula is this. 1, there is a valid reason for the divorce. Number 2, there must be a written divorce document. 3, she must receive it in her hand. 4, then she leaves the house. We generally think that ancient women had no rights, but you might be surprised at the rights that were written in law for all people, even including slaves, going back and beyond to Hammurabi's Code almost 4,000 years ago. If you're not familiar, Hammurabi was a Babylonian king. Similar and better laws apply to women in Israel. The point is, the man had to get a legal written divorce settlement first, then give a copy to his wife, and then send her away. This made the divorce official so that she had a settlement, could prove it, and was free to legally marry again and could never be accused of adultery. And this is where the fine print is important to understand in the first half of Jesus' statement regarding divorce. Let me show it to you again. Note that dismiss is not the same as divorce. Matthew 5:31. Now it was declared, whoever should be dismissing his wife, let him be giving her a divorce. Yet I'm saying to you that everyone dismissing his wife outside of a case of prostitution is making her commit adultery. And whosoever should be marrying her who has been dismissed is also committing adultery. Dismissing is not the same as divorcing. They're two different words. If it was, this would be saying, whoever is divorcing his wife, let him be divorcing his wife, which is, of course, uselessly redundant. The point is, dismissing is just putting your wife out of your house without a legal divorce. Yes, the statement goes on to say, let him be giving her a divorce. But the legal divorce has to come before the putting out. Otherwise, the woman is left abandoned and unprotected on the street. And there is no incentive for the husband to ever make a legal settlement with her. She has no support and cannot remarry. The Old Testament guaranteed her these rights, and this is what Jesus was emphasizing. Believe it or not, women's rights in this instance. So now everything that Jesus said makes sense. Number one, prostitution is not the only reason for divorce. Number two, a wife need not become a prostitute to obtain a divorce. Or the wife, or the husband, I should say. And let me make another aside here. This is funny. Years ago, before I was born or whatever, but I was aware of it, that in maybe in certain states or so, people stage an illicit affair in order to get a divorce, because the only reason for divorce was adultery. So a man and a wife who wanted to get divorced, and yet neither of them were having an affair on the side, they would stage one in a motel somewhere, and they would arrange for a photographer to burst in at the right moment, and the man and the woman would be in their underwear, although they, not having had sex of any sort, and they would take pictures of it, and then the couple would present, one of the couple would present this evidence in court, and then the court could justifiably say, yes, okay, there was an affair going on here, and because that's the only reason that divorce is permitted in this state, okay, now they can have a divorce, which of course was all ridiculous. But because of this strange law that didn't make any sense, they got reasons that didn't make any sense to obtain a divorce. Number three, a husband can divorce his wife even if she isn't a prostitute, so they don't have to go through that staged affair. 4, likewise, a wife can divorce her husband for violence or whatever else reasons, legitimate reasons. 5, a wife cannot be divorced without a legal settlement, which could well involve custody and land to support her. I think, you might be surprised that, the courts in Israel, we tend to think that women were second-rate citizens. And I'm not saying that, there isn't rules and laws and such that differentiate between men and women. But, a proper judge with a good understanding of the proper Old Testament laws, women were dealt with justly. And even in that Hammurabi's code that I was talking about, like I say, that goes back to 1800 BC. There was written laws, saying that in the cases of divorce, women could get custody of the children, and not only custody, but they could get land, farmland of some sort or another, in order to support her, because, well, obviously she needed some sort of support. So everything wasn't as prehistoric as we might think. Number 6, with a legal divorce, both are free to marry again. And 7, anyone marrying a divorcee is not committing adultery. So we see that all things come together and make sense again here. So Jesus did nothing new here, though. All he was doing was setting the original law straight. For indeed, the law is holy, and the precept holy, and just, and good. Romans 7:12. Conclusion. In Matthew 5, Jesus is not setting aside the Old Testament law in favor of a new teaching. He is upholding the standards of the old law, just as was intended by God. He identifies those who obey the law and adhere carefully to the written word, and he contrasts them with those who would relax the commands or who would abolish them or to hold to their own accumulated teachings about the law. Amen.